Vayipardu, and they separated with a zakeh katon, a three-part note, a munach, and then the two dots over the dalid, number 9, and they separated. Lot and Avram had parted, and they separated themselves not only physically but also ideologically, as illustrated by the diversity of the reading marks. So here we have them separating with three parts to the note. First of all, they're separating physically, that one isn't living next to each other, so we have this physical separation, that's part of the munach, and then they're going to live in separate parts. And by the way, they're going to have different philosophical bents as well, as denoted by the katon. One is going to be a higher philosophy, one's going to be a lower philosophy. So we have all three parts of the note telling us that this is both a physical and a spiritual separation. Ish, tipcha, with a man, focusing us backwards and pausing slightly afterwards. Since then, Lot, like Avram, conducted an independent life. Each was considered a man of his own individuality, as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading mark. So each of them now has completely different characteristics, and therefore they become men of importance on their own, for their own contributions or for their own way that they live their life, and there is no connection between the two of them anymore. Me'al, from over, with a merchav, lightly connected to what's come from before, but mostly moving us forward. Neither one would dictate to the other by a position of seniority, or from over, a stand of superiority, as conveyed by the directional shape of the reading mark. So from here on in, neither one is going to be an authority figure for the other, which is the opposite of what Avram had hoped to achieve, as we had said in the last couple of sukkim. Achiv, his brother, with the stabilizing sof pasuk, departing on good terms. Lot and Avram respected each other like his brother, stressing no interference in conduct or way of life. Each one was considered boss in his own domain. So this word stands in connection to the word me'al, but so even though they are not accepting advice or suasion from the other, they are still respecting each other on the level of allowing each to have his own independence and his own distinct borders. As we read through the sentence, we're going to notice the yutiv on the word 8, which makes that word stand by itself. We're going to notice that Lot is as separated out from Mikedem, from the way that God wanted the world to be, as he can be. There's a pause after Lot, and Mikedem stands by itself. Vayipardu is going to have this complexity of having all of those thoughts in it, so it's going to again stand by itself, and you're going to see all the parts in it. Ish, they become separate people, and that's going to pause afterwards. And Me'al Achiv, there's no influence from the one to the other, but they still respect each other as brothers. Vayivchar lo Lot 8 Kol Kikar Hayardein Vayisa Lot Kedem Vayiparadu Ish Me'al Achiv. And we're going to continue, page 37 at the bottom. Avram with the tipcha. So this is focusing us backwards and pausing slightly afterwards. Although Avram severed relations with Lot through a formal agreement, he still maintained an interest in Lot's well-being and safety, as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading mark. So Lot is separating himself out completely, but Avram's still looking back over his shoulder and saying, is there something that I can do for Lot? and hence the tipcha, the backwards looking note. Yashav, settled, with a munach, so this is separated out and moving forwards. He continued his usual routines of occupation, along with his style of living, and he settled in the countryside without participating in public affairs, nor in the administration or luxuries of his time, as shown by the shape of the reading mark. So Avram is truly separated out from the rest of society around him. Be'eretz Canaan, on land of Canaan, with stabilizing at Machta. He was a regular inhabitant on the land of Canaan without mingling in any outside affairs, as stressed by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So, even though this was the place of Canaan, Avram became a stabilizing influence there because of the way that he separated himself out from the rest of society around him. Velot, with a Revi'i, so again, this is going to have breadth to it. Avram attended to his work, and Lot diverted all his interest to develop his wealth and growth of his assets, as denoted by the broad meaning of the reading mark. And again, we see again and again that we're interpreting Revi'i as sort of a spreading out. So Lot is becoming financially more involved, and his wealth is spreading. Yashav, dwelled, with a pashta. So this is going to focus on the word and push us forward from there. He dwelled luxuriously by high standards. Again, this is a note that's on top of the word. Having many servants and the best available accommodation, as suggested by the high directional shape of the reading mark. So Lot is living at the top of society, if you will.
Living the high life.
Living the high life, yes. Be'arei, by cities of, with a munach. So this is separated out from what's come from before, but mostly moving us forward into what's going to go afterwards. In order to get information about the trends and required productions, Lot maintained informations by cities of commercial centers to receive adequate reports of various shortages in order to take appropriate measures to improve his productivity, as expressed by the shape of the reading mark. So he is going to use his skills of disseminating information to make sure that he looks after his empire. So he is dwelling on high to look after all of his assets, if you will. And we have a side note. This indicates that Lot was a born economic genius. Hakikar, the plain, with the two parts katon. Lot had evaluated the various potential of the plain which he occupied, and he made required innovations for his production, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. If he's going to use it to its advantage, both the good parts and the bad parts. Vaya'ahal, and he spread tents. He tried, number 8, with a tipcha, looking backwards and pausing slightly afterwards. He tried to improve his productivity, and he spread tents by strategic planning, placing them in various positions in order to improve control over his land, as specified by the reverse direction of the reading mark. So again, this is another way of exerting control, both by looking from the top down and also having spots on the ground that could report back up to the top. Ad stom, till stom, with the stabilizing sof pasuk. Although Lot was living an independent life, his past experiences and influences of Avram did not completely vanish. Even though Lot came close till stom, he did not become swallowed by the principles of the locale. So he went ad stom, he went to the borders of stom, but he didn't completely mingle in with everything that they had said. So vaya'ahal, the way that he is spreading his domiciles, the way that the places that he might live in, has a tipcha with a pause, and ad stom is standing by itself. So he's going to the limits of, but not integrating there. as we read through the sentence, you notice that Avram is looking back at Lot, and he stands alone, and Yashav Eretz Canaan is again standing aloof from the local population, but Lot is spreading out, and you see that with the Rivi'i, and he's we see the word Vayehal, and he's spreading his tents. Again, is going to stand by itself. That his participation in Stom is not complete, but his desire and ability to exert control over Etakikar, over the rest of the land, is a growing concern. A concern in the sense of growing business. Avraham Yashav Be'eretz Canaan Vilot Yashav Be'arei Hakikar Vayehal Stom.
What do you think brought Lot to this? Like, if he was raised more or less by Avram, and he'd been traveling with him, and then suddenly he has this, he diverts to a whole different, I guess it was in him to be greedy or better life.
Sudden wealth.
Because Pharaoh gave Lot as well.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, Lot was the one who was starstruck by it, mesmerized by it, and it sort of led him off the path. But I guess Avram did the right thing, like a parent, where he said, you know, you go your way, no hard feelings, you gotta learn on your own. You'll be back.
So we're going to maybe come to that thought in a couple of psukim. How Avram separates himself from Lot when Lot philosophically sort of crosses the line. Until then, he was still somebody who could be brought under some sway, and therefore he continued to try to influence him from a close. Once he got to a certain level of personal assertiveness and saying this is the way things have to be, Avram had to separate himself out from him. We're going to get to that in a couple of sentences. The Anshe and people of what time is it? I just don't want to keep people too late.
Almost 9:05, yeah.
Okay, so we'll keep on going. The Anshe and people of with a Munach, so this is sharply demarcated from what's come from before and moving forward into what's going to go afterwards. Although Lot did not live in Sdom itself, the detrimental influence of the local customs and people of that locality could affect his offspring to some extent, as indicated by the shape of the reading line. So, even though Lot had made some distance, this was something that was going to be an influence on the way his family acted. Sodom, with the two-part katon to it, the inhabitants of Sodom adopted various kinds of violence, which became symbolic of the entire place, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading line. So Sodom had a variety of different activities, and again, that warrants the more than one part note on top of the word. Ra'im, atrocious ones. And again, not a direct translation with the tikha, looking backwards and pausing slightly afterwards. Thus the dwellers of that city were openly atrocious ones among themselves, and they applied their methods to strangers without regret, shame, or fear of punishment. This was because public opinion accepted as a proper rule of life the law by which the stronger wins, as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading line. So, Sdom made people comfortable in this philosophy. The Chata'im and sinners were stabilizing at Machta, they were bad and sinners, taking advantage of any kind of weakness of an individual, disobeying the rules of human relations. V'lifnei eiver lo titein mikshol, you shouldn't put a stumbling block in front of a blind person, as shown by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So the question is, what's stabilizing here? I sort of struggled with this a little bit. I think it's just their consistency in saying that their rule is the way that things were done around them, and therefore because everybody was following the same thing, there was sort of a chaotic order to it. That everybody understood the rules was, the strongest survives, and you don't care for anyone else, and at least everybody knew that that's the way things were there.
Well, sure, because it's a simpler approach to life. There's no nuanced issues, no grades. I'm stronger, I win, period. There's no other consideration. So it just makes life easier, more stable. So.
And we have a side note, Ra'im v'chata'im, as the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, interprets Ra'im b'gufam, bad by their body, so by the way that they acted physically, v'chata'im b'mamonam, and sinners through their money and deeds, and the way that they acted economically with others is how they were defined as sin. But Hashem, for God, with a tifcha, so this is backwards focused and pausing slightly afterwards. Number 5, besides open crimes, which were obvious to everyone, they also committed offenses open for God only, because they were conducted in secrecy, as stressed by the reverse direction of the reading mark. So not only were they doing the other things, but when you looked at hidden crimes, at crimes that only God would know about, they were doing those as well. Me'od, very, with a stabilizing pasuk. Recourse to very severe punishments, including death, was an accepted daily occurrence. So they would go to the extreme, and in order to enforce their way of conducting yourself. As we read through the sentence, we're going to notice that the words ra'im and chata'im are separated out. So those are different categories. It's not that they're things that flow together. And Hashem is also going to stand out, even things that are hidden. And ma'od, to the very extreme, again, is going to stand out. So the phraseology here allows each of these words to stand out as we read through them. Go ahead, sir.
Sorry, I'm not sure how we make the leap from Lashem, Ra'im v'chatim Lashem, about their sins, to Ma'od referring to punishment.
So the first thing is, Lashem has a tifcha, so that's the pause after it. So the word Ma'od is standing by itself. So it's got to have a meaning that stands all by itself, and the sentence could have ended without that word. Ra'im v'chata'im Hashem. So they were not only Ra'im v'chata'im, they were not only both in moral characteristics and in business evil people. Mm-hmm. But they would do things that would offend God as well. Mm-hmm. And the word ma'od is unnecessary.
Right.
So it's got to have a separate thing that it's talking about. It's not talking about anything that we've said so far. So it is talking about a different issue, and he feels that that different issue is the way that they exacted punishment from people who did not agree with their philosophy.
So there's nothing intrinsic about the ma'od, it's just the fact that it's standing by itself and should represent a different concept.
Right. It's extra, and it's specifically separated out. Mm-hmm. So it's got to talk about something different, and we're saying it's their system of justice. V'anshe Sodom ra'im v'chatayim Hashem me'od. Again, you see the fragmentation there because each of those words is talking about a different concept. And we are on the bottom of page 39 of Hashem, and with a Gershaim, so a two-part note, focusing us on that word, elevating it, and pausing slightly afterwards. When Lot, and it's a two-part note again, when Lot had severed his relations with Avram, moving away from him to a close neighborhood of Sodom, it exerted a depressive effect on Avram. And God filled his emotional vacuum, cheering him by direct communication, as indicated by the shape and direction of the reading mark. So Avram is looking back at what Lot has just left him, and he's missing the companionship. God is saying, "Look back, and I'm going to give you something good from this."
What note is that?
This is a Gershaim, so this is backwards facing, two together.
Oh, that's okay. Hard to tell.
So we'll go on. This is very different from what most of the other Mefarshim and what the Zohar says is going on here. What pretty well everyone else is saying is that once Avram has lifted Lot's influence from on top of him, then Avram was able to clearly hear God's voice, and not until then. So the influence of having Lot, who was Nasa Mikedem, who went away from the philosophy of that God was the originator. So from that point, Avram couldn't hear God clearly anymore. And the moment he separates out from Lot, then Avram can hear clearly. But here we're saying Avram is pining for the companionship still, and God is rewarding him. And we say that because of the directional shape of the note. Amar said with a sharply demarcated munach, so different from what he was doing before. God wasn't talking to him before, but it's going to go on from there afterwards. Following a prolonged intermission, God reestablished Avram's confidence and said to him to expect changes in the future, shown by the shape of the reading mark. So the things are going to be different from here on in. El Avram, again with the breadth of the Revi'i, it was a sign to Avram that, after all, he was not abandoned by heavenly supervision, even in a state of wealth, like he was in conditions of misery, as stressed by the broad meaning of the reading mark. So God was going to stand beside him no matter what circumstances Avram found himself in. Acharei, that should have a pashta on top of it. So on top of the resh there should be a pashta. So again, on top of the word and focusing us to look forward from thereafter. After that, number 4. After Avram felt lonely by losing a member of his family who followed him on most journeys and in his pursuits, he expected that more losses and deprivations would follow, as denoted by the directional shape of the reading mark. So Avram is thinking that things are going to go bad from here. He parted Lot with the separated out munach, so this is sharp demarcation and moving forward from there. At the time when had parted Lot, Avram thought a period of gradual degradation and eventual loss of most or all possessions had begun for him, as suggested by the shape of the reading mark. Avram felt that everything that was good from before is now going to continue to fall apart. Mei imo, from by him, with the two-part katon. Avram reasoned that just as Lot had abandoned him, so had heavenly supervision retracted from him and discontinued its presence from by him. and withdrawn its availability at times of need, as expressed by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So again, this is quite different from what anybody else is saying, because we have to give meaning to each word in and of itself. So Avram is thinking that it was good before, and now it's going to be worse. The two dots up on top of each other. Sa with a munach, again separated from what's come from before, and moving afterwards to what's going to be the new state. Number 7, in this state of Avram's depression, God intervened and suggested that he lift his mood and hope in order to qualify for higher spiritual levels, in the sense of Ein Shechina Shoreh mitoch hatzvut. The heavenly spirit does not rest on one in sorrow, as specifically as specified by the shape of the reading mark. So God is telling him to move out of that state of depression and move forward into na with a mapach, taking the concept from before and focusing it more narrowly. Please, number 8, before getting an inspiration, please direct your emotions upward to be suitable as a recipient, as illustrated by the shape of the reading mark. So again, get yourself focused and move forward to einecha, your eyes looking upwards, with the two parts, with the two pashtaot. Again, we had said pashta always comes at the end of the word, and if that's not the accented syllable, we get a second one coming on the syllable that in fact gets its accent. So this is a doubled note. Number 9, only in the state of elevation will your eyes become suitable for physical seeing at a distance and for spiritual viewing of the future, as conveyed by the double directional shape of the reading mark. So both to look physically at what piece of land he was on, and also to look spiritually into how things were in fact looking up for him, if you will. Or A, and look with a two-part katon. You adapt your sight adequately and look over all distances. You will comprehend unlimited extents and infinite times, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So not only the physical distances that he would be able to spread, but also the spiritual ones. Min hamakom, with the tipcha, focusing this backwards and pausing slightly afterwards. Number 11, from the place. You will then discover that all beings and events are solely controlled from the place, God. So we'd say Seder Baruch HaMakom. So when we say place, he's saying that that's one of God's names here, which is the original center of the universe, as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading mark. So we're saying this tipcha with one of God's names on it is focusing us all the way back to Breshit. And he's specifically saying that not mi makom, from the physical location where you are on the map, but rather min hamakom, you're separating out hamakom from God's influence, because that's why it's separated out as a word in its entirety. Asher ata, with a munach. So again, separated out and moving forward from there. Number 12, that you, by the capacities that you operate now, you should see only a temporary limited environment, as depicted by the shape of the reading mark. So you don't need to look at things that were from before. You can just focus your vision forward. Sham, there, number 13, with a stabilizing etnachta. However, by inspiration, you could also grasp what is there, sham, beyond the horizon, along with past and future events, as demonstrated by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So what he's saying is that you're going to have that Avram did have prophetic vision, that he could see other events and times, and by allowing himself to let himself be influenced by the heavenly position that he was in. He could literally see the future. Tzafona, towards north, with a marcha, so lightly connected to what's come from before, but mostly moving us forwards afterwards. We'll come back to the note in a second. Number 14, you will be able to comprise eternity with infinity in all directions, regardless of whether your views are towards north. You will not encounter any obstacle, as signified by the directional shape of the reading mark. So you're going to be able to look north forever. We're going to go back to the note of Min hamakom asher tasham, from the place that you there would be meaninglessly interjected without the explanation based on the reading marks.